Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Israel bombards Gaza, prepares invasion as Biden urges path to two states. Macquarie, Cargill CEOs and celebrities attend Biden's state dinner. What to know about Rangers Globe Life Field, Diamondbacks Chase Field for World Series. U.S. seeks delay in Gaza ground invasion to put air defenses in place. Evening update: Netanyahu says Israel preparing for Gaza ground invasion but reportedly has agreed to U.S. request to delay the move. Israel bombards Gaza, prepares invasion as Biden urges path to two states. Reuters. Israel continued its airstrikes on Hamas targets in Gaza as it prepared for a ground invasion while more Palestinian civilians were killed. The United Nations failed to secure plans to deliver critical humanitarian aid, and world powers struggled to find a solution. U.S. President Joe Biden said that Israelis and Palestinians deserve to live side by side in safety, dignity, and peace. Biden also stated that Hamas attacked southern Israel to prevent normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The United Nations proposed resolutions for a ceasefire, but both the U.S. and Russia proposals failed to gain enough support. Macquarie, Cargill CEOs and celebrities attend Biden's state dinner. Bloomberg. What to know about Rangers Globe Life Field, Diamondbacks Chase Field for World Series. Yahoo! The Texas Rangers will host Games 1, 2, 6, and 7 of the World Series at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, while the Arizona Diamondbacks will host Games 3, 4, and 5 at Chase Field in Phoenix. Globe Life Field, which opened in 2020, has a retractable roof and a capacity of 40,300. Chase Field, which opened in 1998, also has a retractable roof and a capacity of 48,519. The stadiums have previously hosted other sporting events, concerts, and the MLB All-Star Game. U.S. seeks delay in Gaza ground invasion to put air defenses in place. New York Times. The Biden administration has asked Israel to delay a ground invasion of Gaza in order to give the U.S. more time to put air defense batteries and other military assets in place to protect American troops. U.S. officials have been pushing for a delay in order to negotiate the release of hostages, allow more aid into the region, and potentially move the Israeli military away from a grinding urban fight. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has held off on a land invasion since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7. Evening update: Netanyahu says Israel preparing for Gaza ground invasion but reportedly has agreed to U.S. request to delay the move. The Globe and Mail. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that his country is preparing a ground invasion of Gaza, but has not provided any details on the timing or other information about the operation. The decision on when forces would enter Gaza will be taken by the government's special war cabinet. Meanwhile, Israel has agreed to delay an expected invasion of Gaza so that the United States can rush missile defenses to the region to protect American troops there. President Joe Biden condemned attacks by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank and called on Israel to defend its citizens while protecting innocent civilians in Gaza who are victims of the conflict. In other news, the Indian government has resumed processing visa applications by Canadians after recently suspending the service due to the downturn in relations between the two countries. The Indian High Commission in Canada will begin processing visa applications at its diplomatic mission in Ottawa as well as at consulates in Toronto and Vancouver. Israel's Prime Minister and its army are damagingly divided. Economist. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is under increasing pressure from his hard-right base to prove his readiness to destroy Hamas. However, Mr. Netanyahu is facing criticism from his defense minister, Yoav Gallant, leading to divisions within the Israeli government. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have been angered by Mr. Netanyahu's proxies, who have stated that the IDF is not fully prepared for the ground campaign in Gaza. The IDF have responded by insisting that they are ready. The tension between Mr. Netanyahu and the IDF is hampering Israel's war planning. The IDF's Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, has already admitted the failure of the IDF and the intelligence community to detect and prevent the Hamas attack. The Prime Minister, however, has not accepted any responsibility. Mr. Netanyahu has instead been focusing on politicking, spending time with political advisors and briefing journalists. The coalition of far-right and ultra-religious parties that supports Mr. Netanyahu is anxious to cling on to power for as long as possible, but they are also facing public anger and the prospect of another election. Mr. Netanyahu has isolated and neglected Gaza for over a decade, and his reluctance to plan for the future could cost Israel even more. An audio diary of despair. New York Times. A 19-year-old Palestinian woman in Gaza has been documenting her experiences during the recent conflict with Israel through voice messages sent via WhatsApp. Tasneem Ismail Ahel has been sharing her reflections on the war, which has resulted in over 6,500 Palestinian deaths, with the New York Times. Tasneem was born under siege and has never left Gaza, and fears she never will. She has always dreamed of studying abroad and pursuing a career in both science and the arts, but each war in Gaza has forced her to put her dreams on hold. In the past 2 weeks, Tasneem and her family have had to flee their apartment and move in with her uncle, and parts of her neighborhood have been destroyed. Despite the danger, Tasneem and her family have chosen to stay in Gaza, as they cannot afford to travel and do not have anywhere else to go. The article includes quotes from Tasneem's voice messages, in which she describes the horrors of the war and the toll it has taken on her and her family. Iran oil sales are surging and Hamas is terrorizing. Is Biden to blame? Washington Post. Republicans have argued that President Biden's policies towards Iran have allowed the country to finance terrorist activities, specifically the recent Hamas attack on Israel. They claim that Iran has earned billions of dollars from oil sales under Biden, which has in turn funded terrorism. However, there is no evidence to support these claims. The Trump administration estimated in 2020 that Iran sends $100 million per year to Hamas, and there is no report showing an increase in funding under Biden. While it is true that Iran has been able to sell more petroleum products under Biden than it did under Trump, McCarthy's numbers are largely incorrect and Cruz's appear exaggerated. Iran's foreign reserves have grown about 50% since 2020, not the 1,000% claimed by McCarthy, and its current oil production is around 3 million barrels a day, rather than the 400,000 barrels a day mentioned by McCarthy. The Biden administration rejects the idea that it is not enforcing sanctions, and a Treasury Department official has stated that an administration diplomatic campaign has ensured there are no new buyers of Iranian oil. Additionally, the administration has seized nearly 5 million barrels of petroleum product and announced the first criminal resolution involving the illicit sale and transport of Iranian oil in violation of sanctions. Overall, these claims are largely exaggerated and unsupported by evidence, and there is no evidence to suggest that Iran is sending billions of dollars to Hamas or that Biden's policies are directly funding terrorism. LSU OT Emory Jones expected to play versus Alabama. Yahoo! LSU right tackle Emory Jones is expected to play against Alabama after missing the Army game. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news from around the world. Today, we covered a range of topics, from the escalating conflict between Israel and Palestine, to the state dinner held at the White House, to the upcoming World Series games. Let's dive into the analysis and share some thoughts. Starting with the situation in Israel and Gaza, tensions remain high as Israel continues its airstrikes and prepares for a ground invasion. The United Nations has failed to secure plans for delivering critical humanitarian aid, and world powers are struggling to find a solution. U.S. President Joe Biden has called for Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in safety, dignity, and peace. He also highlighted the role of Hamas in preventing normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The proposed resolutions for a ceasefire have not gained enough support. This conflict is a complex one, with no easy solutions. It is imperative for the international community to come together and find a way to de-escalate the situation. Moving on to a lighter topic, we discussed the state dinner held at the White House to honor Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The event showcased the growing importance of Australia under the Biden administration and the US's efforts to strengthen ties with allies in the Indo-Pacific region. The guest list included prominent business executives and celebrities, highlighting the significance of this occasion. The US and Australia also announced initiatives on critical minerals and infrastructure, further solidifying their partnership. It's always interesting to see how diplomacy plays out in these high-profile events. Shifting gears, we touched on the upcoming World Series games. The Texas Rangers will host games 1, 2, 6, and 7 at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, while the Arizona Diamondbacks will host games 3, 4, and 5 at Chase Field in Phoenix. Both stadiums have retractable roofs and have previously hosted major sporting events. It's an exciting time for baseball fans, and I'm sure they are eagerly awaiting the start of the series. Next, we discussed the US's request to Israel to delay a ground invasion of Gaza in order to protect American troops. This move highlights the Biden administration's focus on ensuring the safety of its personnel and giving more time for negotiations and aid to be delivered. The situation is delicate, and every effort to minimize casualties and find a diplomatic solution is crucial. Moving on to politics, we covered the internal divisions within the Israeli government. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is facing increasing pressure from his hard-right base, while his defense minister has criticized his readiness to destroy Hamas. These divisions are hampering Israel's war-planning efforts and could have long-term consequences. It's a challenging situation for Netanyahu and his coalition, and the future remains uncertain. We also shared the story of a young Palestinian woman, Tasneem Ismail Ahel, who has been documenting her experiences during the conflict through voice messages sent via WhatsApp. Her story provides a first-hand perspective on the horrors of war and the toll it takes on individuals and families. It serves as a reminder of the human cost of these conflicts and the urgent need for a peaceful resolution. Additionally, we addressed the claims made by Republicans that President Biden's policies towards Iran have allowed the country to finance terrorist activities, specifically the recent Hamas attack on Israel. These claims are largely exaggerated and unsupported by evidence. It's important to separate fact from fiction and not jump to conclusions without proper evidence. Lastly, we briefly mentioned some other news, such as the ongoing negotiations between the United Auto Workers Union and Ford, the rise in Bitcoin prices, and the financial challenges faced by Boeing. That wraps up today's news. Remember, these are complex issues that require careful consideration and analysis. I encourage all of you to share your thoughts and ideas. What are your opinions on the situation in Israel and Gaza? How can we find a path to peace? What are your thoughts on the state dinner and the World Series? Let's keep the discussion going and work towards a better understanding of the world we live in. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.